Welcome to the fourth meeting of the Senate Standing Committee on Economic Development, Tourism, and Labor of the 2025 session. I'd like to remind everybody in the audience to please silence their cell phones, and if you're interested in testifying, please use the sign-in sheet by the podium. The testimony is within the chair's discretion and the time constraints and information already presented. So as a reminder, no signs are permitted in committee rooms, and if any member has a question or comment, please signal to Janine or Sasha. Sasha, if you could, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell.
Here.
Senator Gardler.
Here.
Senator Howe.
Here.
Senator Maiden.
Here.
Senator Nunn.
Here.
Senator Thomas. Senator Wilson. Senator Wise. Senator Yates. Vice Chair Funky Fromeyer.
Present.
Chair Wheeler.
Present. I believe we have a quorum, and so we will convene. There's a couple folks that are wanting to come in to talk about some of the bills, so we're going to go a little bit out of order. I'm going to begin with my co-chair, Senator Funky Fromeyer, with Senate Bill 162. Please take the chair and identify yourself for the record.
Thank you, Chair Wheeler. My name is Senator Shelley Funky Fromeyer. I'm Senate District 24, which is Campbell, Pendleton, Bracken in the northeast corner of Kenton. And also joining me is Brian Simke. Okay, wonderful. So I'm so excited about the announcement of Senate Bill 1 that I feel like I'm bringing us down a notch for a minute. So forgive me, but I do want to identify an issue. And this act of Senate Bill 162 is relating to unemployment insurance. But what it is, it's a bit of an economic development message as well. The unemployment office does not have a branch or a piece of the office that actually would investigate claims of fraud.
Senator, if I could just interrupt you just for a second. I just realized we have a sub, so I would entertain a motion on the same.
Motion on sub.
All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right. You may proceed again. I'm very sorry.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I failed to bring that forward. And with Senate Bill 162 as the sub, we made a slight adjustment in section number 1, but recognizing if there is a member of the unemployment office that believes there could be fraud, perhaps in the process of doing their work, they see something that just doesn't look right. Now there is a process that we're more clearly establishing on how to address that. What's the process? I'm going to take a moment and hand it over to Brian Simke. Brian, if you'll introduce yourself for the record and then share in a bit more detail about the importance and what does this bill do?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Brian Sikma. I am a visiting fellow at the Foundation for Government Accountability Action, where I've had the chance over the last few years to work on unemployment insurance and workforce issues. And I appreciate the vice chair tackling this very important issue. As she did mention, this is an economic development issue in many ways and a workforce issue. In the state of Kentucky in the last 3 years, just based on data that the Commonwealth has reported to the U.S. Department of Labor, there's been about $87 million in unemployment insurance claims that have been overpaid or that have been potentially fraudulent. And that has been flagged by the folks that administer the unemployment program. And so what this bill does is extremely common sense. We saw during the pandemic, there was a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse. And really at the federal level, you only see enforcement agencies like the FBI and like other agencies get involved if the dollar amount is extremely significant. And so what this bill it does is extremely important because it does set up a mechanism for the employees of the state who manage and administer the unemployment program to make referrals whenever the dollar amount is smaller. Perhaps maybe from a federal perspective, it's not as enticing to go after someone who is not part of a transnational or organized criminal element that's trying to scam the UI system. But nevertheless, tens of thousands of dollars here and there do add up and really result in a twofold penalty in Kentucky because one, it penalizes the employers who fund the system, right? They are the ones that pay taxes. And so every dollar that goes out the door in unemployment compensation to someone who is not eligible for it raises their tax rate, essentially. And then two, most importantly, I think, is there are many good folks who do need to take advantage of unemployment benefits to get through a tight spot when they lose a job through no fault of their own. And there's a strain on the system when folks who are not entitled to those benefits, unfortunately, are able to obtain those benefits. And so something like this is a profoundly reasonable proposal and addresses a very important gap in the current enforcement process.
Thank you, Brian. That was excellent. And I wanted to acknowledge Senator Wheeler. This is unfortunately something that we saw in our own unemployment office within Kentucky. So it is so essential that we acknowledge the issue, tackle the issue, and have a resolution path.
I believe the incident, there was actually some individuals that worked there were processing claims but drawing it at the same time, correct?
Yes, that has been clearly reported and investigated and found to be accurate.
Okay. I believe Senator Howell has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Funky Fromeyer, thank you for bringing this, and I apologize. I had this question yesterday. I could not get with you until right before the hearing. I apologize for that. In Section 2, Paragraph 3, there's the part about tolling the receipt of benefits for someone who is under investigation, which I think is a very logical step. And I didn't see in here, I may have missed it, a mechanism for those benefits to be paid to the claimant if the investigation shows that there wasn't any fraud. Because I think if there was no problem on an ultimate disposition, that they would be entitled to those benefits. So I'd like to work with you after that, and if that's not, if that is accurate, can we look at maybe a floor amendment or something to clean that up?
We will, Senator Howell. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Yates.
Thank you, Senator, first of all, for being here, and thank you for reaching out. And I keep reading through this, and I like a lot of the premise of it. And like I said, there are a couple things that I'm having trouble getting through, and I know that's part of our process. Sometimes we work through, and I think Brian is here testifying. It may be a question better for him, so I'm not putting you on the spot, but either or. My worry is, again, the same as Senator Howell, that it almost switches. That once the allegation is made, then the individual right then and there would be terminated from receiving any type of the unemployment until it switched over, and then it would swing the burden till the determination is made that they weren't false. And for a lot of the constituents I represent, that would put them in a horrific position while we wait that, especially when we've seen how long these determinations can make. And so I'm worried about that because there's several parts of this bill that I think are on the money. But that particular part worries me. And then as I dive down, I know there's a United States Supreme Court case that said that you almost that it would be out of compliance. So I worry about that as well. And so that when a claimant was found to be eligible, that they have to be afforded the opportunity to be heard immediately, and we go through there, and it's a whole process. So unemployment benefits are for people who have been employed, who've worked, who've done everything, and then by no fault of their own, that they no longer have that employment. And we've decided as a safety net for our workers that we want to catch all, because we know it's better for Kentucky families and all of us. And as much as we've seen in the past couple of years, and absolutely there's some fraud, but there's mistakes too. How many of us have had constituents call and say, hey, this was a mess up here. I did not get my benefits. This was an issue. I don't feel like it's fair to shift the burden to the weakest as we make our determination. So that would be my only hiccup with this bill as it is. And I love and I really appreciate your ability to continue to work with us to make it the best bill we can. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Yates. Brian, is there something that you might want to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely, Senator. I would just say that right now, under federal law and then under Kentucky statute as well, there is a requirement that claims be quickly adjudicated. So the way I read this legislation, and I'm certainly, I think there's always a great conversation to be had about this, is that those benefits would be suspended, but that's actually a very short period of time, because the good news is Kentucky and a lot of folks out there have begun to upgrade and modernize their unemployment insurance system so that the data flow is much faster, and employees that are administering the program are able to make these fraud determinations very quickly. And there's also a very quick review process so that folks who are truly eligible can immediately come up and identify that, hey, here's the documentation that I have to prove that my claim was not fraudulent and that I truly am who I say I am. So the modernization process that has been underway for the last 2 years really does address the speed at which these claims are adjudicated.
Brian, if I may ask a question myself, would there be a way to possibly put some type of time limit in there that, you know, essentially maybe they get an emergency 10 days or something like that, or even within a week, that might, 'cause I do believe there are some valid concerns brought up in that regard.
Well, certainly I would defer to the sponsor and all of you there to make that policy choice. But there is language that could be crafted that would ensure that after a short time frame, if a correction was made, then the benefits are reinstated. I will also point out, though, that as currently drafted, the sub does not prevent individuals from getting those benefits to which they're entitled once that claim has been adjudicated. So I know there's been some concern in a few different states that have worked on something like this. You know, does this mean the person loses those benefits for those period of weeks, never to get them back? And I think the way the sub is crafted, it's very well intentioned, and it makes sure that doesn't happen. But certainly, it's a policy choice that legislators could make to say, hey, there's a review period here of up to 10 business days, and then after that, if the issue is not resolved, then the benefits go back into being paid. And really, I think the most important part about this bill is making sure that a law enforcement entity, once there is a suspected case of fraud, does have all the information that they need to initiate an investigation.
Thank you very much. Senator Yates, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, and I think it was along the same lines, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Is the time I'm looking again, reading the Java case with the U.S. Supreme Court, and just when that they're due when they're due, and it has to be on time. And there was talking about no later than the end of the week, and so I think there has to be a time frame into it, because it's not fair based on our if we make a mistake, we cannot let the individual people bear the burden of that, especially these are working people who otherwise would depend on that. They've paid into that. And so we want to make sure they're protected. Obviously, we want to snuff out fraud, but not at the expense of our people. And unfortunately, I'm embarrassed of how long some of the responses were, not just in Kentucky, but throughout the country with the unemployment benefits and some of the problems we had. And so I know there's a lot of people who would be very, very concerned if we switch the burden to them. Thank you.
Senator Boswell, this will be the final question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I think this bill has some really good parts of it, but I am concerned about a comment that was made about that current claims are being adjudicated in a quicker manner. The number one complaint I get from my district is that
This would just be
unemployment claims are not being adjudicated
This would only be if there's a fraud.
fair and quickly. They're very far behind, maybe as much as 3 or 4 months behind on adjudicating. So this
challenged, it can
is
take
part of this issue, but I think you've got a pretty good bill.
Thank you. And I would love to respond relative to the bill's primary focus is to acknowledge that there's some suspicion of fraud, but a person's already receiving benefits. So there's a suspicion of fraud. They're already receiving benefits. So they're not without benefits. And upon the suspicion of fraud, then it is creating a process. So you'll see in Section 1, part of the referral shall include the name of the applicable employer, employee, claimant, and name used in the suspected fraud, any contact information the cabinet possesses for the suspected fraudulent actor, any information filed with or reported to the cabinet regarding the suspected fraud. Yeah.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, if you could please call the roll.
Senator Boswell.
Aye.
Senator Funky Fromeyer.
Aye.
Senator Gardler. Senator Howe.
Aye.
Senator Maiden. Senator Nunn. Senator Thomas. Senator Wilson. Senator Wise. Senator Yates.
Explain my vote, please. I will cast a no vote to get us onto the floor, and I want to tell my colleague that I do appreciate her willingness to be able to work to amend to hopefully address some of the issues that we brought forth today, and that's why I enjoyed this process. We kind of just work through to get the best bills. Thank you.
Chair Wheeler.
I cast an aye vote, and I think my colleague and co-chair's always got a willingness to work with people to make a good bill better. So thank you, Shelley.
Thank you, Chairman.
All right, so the bill is, what is that, 8-1, passes with favorable expression, and will proceed to the floor. Thank you, Senator or Co-Chair Fromeyer.
And thank you, Brian.
All right, so I guess we'll circle back around to Senate Bill 1. If My co-chair, Senator Fromeyer, could assume. Cheryl.
This is an exciting moment. Senator Wheeler, it looks like you may have a number of guests with you too. Do we have enough chairs? That's right.
Would you all like to come up? Yeah. We can pull up another one. No problem.
We do have a committee substitute as well. We do. Okay. And committee, I do believe that we have a committee sub on Senate Bill 1. Do I have a motion to adopt? So moved. A second? Thank you. Second one, Senator Boswell. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, Senator Wheeler, please introduce yourself and your guests.
All right, Senator Wheeler, Philip Wheeler, 31st Senate District, Pike County. Thank you, Chair Fromeyer. I'm very honored to sit with Mary Kay Poe, Ms. D. Wrigley, and Mary Quinn Raymer today to introduce Senate Bill 1 to the committee. Senate Bill 1 is a bill that aims to revolutionize the film production industry in the Commonwealth of Kentucky and essentially bring Kentucky to the world. I'm honored to have as additional guests folks out of my own district that have had a feature film. Mayor Harold Sloan of Louisa, Kentucky, and his wife and son. They've recently filmed a production right here in Kentucky, Ghost of the Big Sandy, which will be released on Netflix soon. So I invited them here today as a demonstration of how the power of this bill extends not only to Kentucky's urban centers, but really creates possibilities throughout the Commonwealth. Madam Chair, Kentucky's charm and natural landscape really makes it attractive to so many filmmakers. In my own home territory, I recently mentioned this at the press conference next door, the Hatfield McCoys was probably one of the more famous productions done in recent years. It was actually about 12 years ago. I guess I'm showing my age, but Kevin Costner starred in that film about that infamous feud, and unfortunately I found out later that production was actually filmed in Romania, which, no offense to the Romanians, but Eastern Kentucky is a great place to visit and do business, and the folks even speak your own language. So I mean, it's a pretty good place to do a production. In addition to having access to the actual historic sites where these tragic events occurred. I think that Kentucky has a great film tax credit structure in place, as you'll hear from some of my guests. It's probably one of the top 10 in the United States. The problem is it is not being utilized to its full potential, and that's what Senate Bill 1 aims to correct by the creation of the Kentucky Film Office. With this new Kentucky Film Commission, which will then hire an executive director to carry out the day-to-day activities of the film office, we aim to bring Kentucky to the world. Film production, even as it currently stands, a study by the University of Louisville that's in your packet shows created a $200 million economic impact in 2022. That in turn created, we estimate, at least a $128 million impact for derivative businesses that also receive purchases and services off of those actual productions. All that yielded approximately $27 million in local, state, and federal tax revenue for the Commonwealth of Kentucky. But Kentucky's not reached its full potential. If we can make $200 million with a single-page website and an email address, if we get a full-time film director and a commission that includes leaders like Mary Kay Poe and Ms. D. Wrigley sitting next to me, then, there's no reason why Kentucky can't become the next Georgia. And as we've seen from that state that passed tax incentives about the same time as Kentucky, they have created a multi-billion-dollar film production industry utilizing a formula similar to what we have outlined in Senate Bill 1. Senate Bill 1 finances the new film office by taking approximately 2.5% of Kentucky's transit tax up to $500,000 a year as seed money, in addition to the applications for production, which will be rolled back into the committee. And I think as we get more in Kentucky, will essentially become a self-sustaining office in the long run. This bill has the potential to make Kentucky a place for destination or for film destination tourism. Like I said, we have numerous examples. I think it was brought up, Game of Thrones, The Hobbit in New Zealand, the Steps in Rocky in Philadelphia. There's no reason why when we have these films in Kentucky, we can guess that those things will naturally flow into our Commonwealth as well, creating additional tax revenues that the Commonwealth desperately needs. And I think in a great potential for rural Kentucky, which has struggled economically. So that's essentially the crux of the bill. If my guests, Mary Kay Poe or Ms. DeWrigley, would like to add something to the bill, would you care to add a few comments? Or turn on your microphone.
Okay.
Thank you, and so glad to have you here. If you'll introduce yourself for the record.
I am Mary Kay Poe. I'm a producer and a local partner in the Louisville Garden Soundstage project. One of the ways that now we have some local or regional film offices that have kind of filled the void of marketing their locations. But what a state film office would do, one of the tools that's very handy, and I'm looking now at a display of some beautiful scenery from around the Commonwealth. There's software that allows for a database for locations. Locations dictate incentives first, locations a close second, where a producer chooses to film. And so what they first do is see who offers the good incentives, and then they shop those states and say they want a nice covered bridge. They'll go to the state website that is hosted by the State Film Office, and they will type in covered bridge. And then they will see all of the locations in that market. And when they see this isn't a covered bridge, but when they see what they like, that's when they send their scouts to go and investigate. And they see what hotels are there, that could they house a crew, what the local infrastructure is there a place to feed their crew, buy building supplies to construct sets. So that is one of the main instruments that when we say we level the playing field, all a city or a town needs to do is upload their beautiful photos. And they're not so beautiful photos. Sometimes we want back alleys and we want, the gritty stuff too. So that's how small towns, rural towns, that's how they get to the entire worldwide global motion picture industry.
Thank you, Mary Kay. Ms. D, would you like to add something?
Sure, thank you very much. I'm very glad that in your package you have the economic impact study done by Professor Lambert. It has some very important numbers that I think most importantly, this program pays for itself in more than one way. It brings an incredible ROI back to the state. I think the tax revenues, it's about a 24% ROI, but I think it's important to know that the program will pay for itself, driving revenues to Kentucky. And the other thing I just wanted to mention is the importance of job development and workforce development. That's one of the first things that producers ask us when they say, we're thinking about coming to Kentucky. What does your crew look like? Well, thanks to people like Dr. Owens at Asbury and Dean Greer at UK and BCTCS, that we are building our own crew here in Kentucky and offering so many jobs to Kentuckians. I think Mary Kay at the press conference said if you sit and look at all of the credits when a film is done, I mean, there is every kind of job imaginable, from, you know, the caterers to the drivers to makeup artists, and these are all jobs that can and will be filled by Kentuckians. So beyond the numbers that you see in the packet that you have, which are very, very compelling, the kind of ripple effect of the positive impact on Kentucky, and, you know, the work of the film office to bring those productions, to bring those dollars is so important. Thank you.
Misty, thank you so much for your testimony. Would you introduce yourself for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry. I am Misty Wrigley Miller. I own Lex Studios and the Wrigley Media Group in Lexington.
Thank you, Misty. And then
Yeah, and I think it's important to emphasize too that part of the commission's duties in conjunction with the executive director will be to score these productions to make sure that Kentuckians are getting a return on their investment. I mean, the goal of this is not only to show off our state, but at the end of the day, it's about to have a positive economic impact and to make money. So,
And I do think we have some questions, Senator
Okay,
Wheeler, and I think it's going to emphasize your point here. Senator Thomas?
Senator Wheeler, I'm going to tell you, you couldn't have a better Senate Bill 1 than this. I've been critical, as you know, this session about some of our priorities, but this certainly should be our top priority in the Senate. Misty, it's good to see you again. Mary Quinn, it's good to see you. I mean, Kentucky's just so well positioned, as you said, to be another Atlanta, Georgia. As you know, Philip, I'm in Atlanta a lot, and I just see, all the growth and money that comes in there because Georgia has been very aggressive with regard to entertainment tax credits. Misty, I just want you to speak to, because I've been to Wrigley Media Group several times. Just tell this committee the growth you've seen in the last 7 years since you've been here, because Wrigley Media has been a transformative part of Fayette County and Central Kentucky. And just talk to what you've seen in the last 7 years and your growth, and what you think this Senate Bill 1 will do for you in the future.
Thank you, Senator Thomas. It's good to see you again, too, sir. We have grown the business of entertainment production in Kentucky organically because we haven't had the assistance of the film office. So individual film offices, people like Mary Kay, have provided the information and going out to the production world and saying, come to Kentucky, because Kentucky has all the advantages, plus the advantage of having one of the best film tax credits in the country, without a doubt. So, we have been growing production. I'm happy to say that Lex Studios has been open for just a little over a year, and we just finished production. We just did 16 episodes of a true crime series in 16 days. So that, kind of that driving force, very, very crew intensive, and we're being able to meet those demands. But if we could have full use of our crews doing what they do, which is going and working on these productions and attracting productions and having the film office be that megaphone for us, so we don't have to spend so much time saying why you need to come to Kentucky, because the film office would do that for us. We have more time to do what we do best, which is to make movies and TV shows.
Thank you, Misty. In fact, I wanted to address a question. Senator Wheeler, I second Senator Thomas's sentiment that this is perhaps one of the most beneficial economic development directions that Kentucky can take. I did a trip to Gwinnett, Georgia, on my own dime about this time last year, and was incredibly impressed at the converted flour factory that has produced tremendous numbers of sitcoms and such. My question, Mary Kay, is perhaps you could address Northern Kentucky's pursuing the Sundance Film Festival. I think, we're getting close, but what benefit might we experience from landing the Sundance Film Festival for the entire Commonwealth, perhaps?
Right. So I would like to also say that Louisville was in the top 5. And Cincinnati now is in the top 3 contenders to be the new home for Sundance Film Festival, starting in 27.
We like to say Northern Kentucky.
Well, that's what we said. We said when the delegation came, if they land in the Cincinnati airport, I wanted a big sign that said "Welcome to Kentucky." Louisville's that way, but they did fly into SDF. So, but obviously, Northern Kentucky is a big part of that, and their venues, their hotels, that is part of that Cincinnati metro area. I would also like to say that there is another Class A large soundstage that's planned for Kenton County, and so the Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, that I think that's just going to blend together down that 71 corridor from Northern Kentucky, and then the 75 corridor down to Lexington. I know in 2012, Atlanta was about where we are now in their age of incentives, and there was a study out saying, can we support more than 4 sound stages? And they were kind of going through their growth spurt. Today there are almost 300 sound stages, and $8.4 billion a year attributed to the industry. So the answer is yes, indeed, with that triangle. And then there are other infrastructure projects throughout. There's one in Owensboro, Southern Kentucky. We need to get over in Eastern Kentucky because we're losing a lot of series that are, as Senator Wheeler said, I know of at least 4 since Hatfields and McCoys. They're set in Appalachia and are filmed in Atlanta or Romania or wherever. So we need to get those Kentucky stories at least home. And so, there's so much potential for growth. Sundance Film Festival is a kind of a once a year thing that sees $100 million in economic revenue. So Kentucky, obviously, we get a portion of that. But what we're talking about is an investment in full-time jobs year-round across the Commonwealth. And we do think it's realistic to get that ROI up to over $1 billion within, I don't know, I don't want to commit, but, just a few years.
Oh, I like a few-year number.
Is a motion in place?
One moment. I think Senator Yates has a question.
Yeah. First of all, a very humble thank you to our sponsor, and then also to Senator President. Thank you for all your work on this. This is something near and dear to the heart. We talk about, I love this committee because it's economic development, and in a state that otherwise, that we're a recipient state. We receive more from the federal government than we could ever get back, that we struggle in so many ways, and the only way that we get out of that is economic development and tourism, attraction. And so not only does this create jobs, but it elevates Kentucky. And so that's something I'm really proud of. I love to be able to put our best foot forward and show that. And so, but this is not in a vacuum. We're doing so many things that work in conjunction. Like right now, the Starks building, potentially they could be converted into 305 housing units that will be for looking to push for artists to be there. And so we're doing this wraparound services to make sure that we're attracting artists in, not just in Louisville, but Lexington, Northern Kentucky, to make sure it can be a destination. So I'm just really proud to be able to have this, and I'm hoping we're all correct, because that's what we've been touting, this return on investment. And that's really, if we're going to invest in something, let's invest something that makes Kentucky look the best it can. So I'm very supportive, and thank you.
Senator Boswell.
Right.
Senator Funky Farmeyer. Senator Girdler.
I'd like to explain my yes vote. Directors, I would ask a personal favor not to use the two sponsors as the face of Kentucky because I think it will hurt us. So I'm asking you to go beyond that. Thank you.
Senator Howe. Senator Maiden. Senator Nunn. Senator Thomas. Senator Wilson. Senator Wise.
Explain my vote. Want to thank the bill sponsor. I want to thank also our guests that are here today, Misty and also Mary Kay. Thank you for working this space. This is fantastic in so many areas: economic development, tourism, like was mentioned. I do want to say though to the senator to my right here, Senator Girdler, if we're looking though for a modern day Chris Farley or Jim Belushi, there's nobody better than who's sitting right there of Senator Wheeler. And I know there's a space for him in this area somehow. And then also I will say you also are looking at a future Wolverine here of Hugh Jackman of Senator Yates that could easily take that position. Or if it's an adaptation of Laverne and Shirley, Squiggy is right here to my right as well. Thank you all so much.
Senator Yates. Yes. Chair Wheeler.
I vote aye, and I want to thank particularly the leadership who have been instrumental with this. I think President Stivers and his commitment to economic development during his tenure down here is really unparalleled. Much of our modern economy in Kentucky, growing economy, is thanks to his leadership and our floor leader, Max Wise, who has really brought a new form of collaboration, I think, to our caucus and in advancing good bills like this that we can get behind in a bipartisan manner. I agree, Senator Thomas, this is a good bill that's good for all of Kentucky, and I'm very honored to carry it.
Did I miss? Oh, sorry. Senate Bill 1, as amended by committee substitute 1, passes with favorable expression, and that same shall pass. Thank you. I believe we have Senate Bill 50 and Senate Bill 25. Senator Robbie Mills. I don't know. He's probably feeling so celebratory. He maybe has some.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm with you. That's all right. So, all right. Well, moving along. We have the. Well, I lost my audience. And here I thought they were all here to see me. I got my mayor with me, so I got my constituents, so that's the one I. Okay, so next up on the agenda, we have our caucus chair, Senator Mills, with Senate Bill 25. And I believe it has a committee substitute, and I would entertain a motion. All right, all those in favor say aye. All right, Senator Mills, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just let you know that Henderson, Kentucky, home of A League of Their Own, was filmed in Henderson, Kentucky, and that was several years. Yeah, that's right. No crying in baseball, but that's a little bit of history for you. Senate Bill 25, we've already adopted the committee sub. The committee sub, actually, there was two parts of this bill. The first part is allowing industrial revenue bonds to be used on residential multifamily housing of 48 units or more. The committee sub just stripped out the second part of that bill that dealt with planning and zoning. So that's what 25 is. directly pertaining to the use of industrial revenue bonds for multifamily units. In our housing task force this year, it was made very clear we're over 200,000 units short in Kentucky. And I think just as important as a factory is or an industrial site is for those bonding, so would a 100-plus apartment complex. So that's the idea behind this. I've already heard from a couple of developers that said they really like this, that they think it's going to make a marginal investment into something that's doable, and would appreciate your consideration for Senate Bill 25.
A motion and a second. No questions. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell. Senator Funky Farmeyer. Senator Gardler. Senator Howe.
Aye.
Senator Maiden. Senator Nunn. Senator Thomas. Senator Wilson. Senator Wise. Senator Yates. Chair Wheeler.
I vote aye, and I think this is a good bill. Senator Mills, in fact, my mayor back there, Lawrence County, is actually about the only county eastern Kentucky currently experiencing population growth, and the mayor and I have had multiple discussions on the need for additional housing there, and I think you're hard. So thank you for bringing this bill, sir.
Very good.
All right, so then we have Senate Bill 50. You may proceed with alacrity. Now.
And and this does have a committee sub as well, if we could adopt that.
All right, we have all right. All those in favor? Aye.
Okay. Once again, Senate Bill 50 comes out of the Housing Task Force, and this is something that Tennessee is doing very well, and it's really kind of an industrial revenue bond twist to residential development. And what this does, let me read through this so you have a little bit more clarity on this. Senate Bill 50 endeavors to add another tool to the toolbox of local governments to facilitate residential development. Senate Bill 50 establishes a residential infrastructure development district. These districts that the developer and or landowners will petition the local governments to establish to help them finance infrastructure over a certain period of time not to exceed 30 years. The establishing ordinance, which is agreed upon by all property owners and local government, will clearly set forth the infrastructure that is being installed, the costs, and the time period repayment. Senate Bill 50 gives local governments the power to issue bonds, notes, and other obligations for the purpose of paying for infrastructure costs, reimbursing developers for payments of prior infrastructure that's been already installed, or refinancing these bonds. Senate Bill 50 gives local governments flexibility to determine how that annual assessment for the district will be assessed, and it will also allow a small fee to be charged for the governments as far as collecting.
Senator Boswell. Senator Funky Farmeyer. Senator Gardler. Senator Howe.
Aye.
Senator Maiden. Senator Nunn.
Explain my vote, please.
Absolutely.
Senator Mills, thank you for both these bills. We had a very important Senate Bill 1 introduced today, and it is a big-time bill, but let's not overlook how important these two bills are for our Commonwealth. We got a lot of potential jobs coming in. We need housing for them, so great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Thomas. Senator Wilson. Senator Wise. Senator Yates.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah, I do appreciate this, especially coming out of the task force. We figured out what best practices are, what they need, and now we need to implement them. And so I'm hoping these get through. I work in a little bit of real estate in there, and there's a lot of people pulling out right now. They're scared of investment. The costs are going to go up, and that's going to create a huge problem because we already don't have enough housing.
Yep.
So now is the time to put these incentives. I think it's important we get this out this session.
Yeah, we got to pull developers back in to our state. So appreciate it, Senator Yates.
Chair Wheeler.
I vote aye, and I believe so. The bill passes. What is that?
10-0.
10-0 will be reported with favorable expression. Thank you, Senator Mills. Let's see. I think Senator Thomas, you had a request before we adjourned.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I was at the Education Committee earlier today, and I missed the discussion on Senate Bill 162. I didn't get a chance to vote on that. I want to be recorded as a no vote on Senate Bill 162.
All right, it will be so noted. Senator Wise, did you want to record any votes? Oh, okay. All right, good deal. All right. Well, thank you very much. That concludes our